This podcast is brought to you by Rebel News. That's right. So if you want to support us, why not do it in a win-win fashion by shopping for yourself? One of my favorite things to do. Head to rebelnewsstore.com to pick the patriotic gear that pleases your heart. And while you're there, use coupon code DREA10 to save while you do.
Shame on you, you censorious thug!
If you're trying to understand Mark Carney's position on Israel and Gaza and the West Bank, if you try and look through it through the prism of foreign relations, it just doesn't make any sense. Why are we siding with the terrorists? Why are we siding against Israel, the only democracy in the region? Why are we so out of step with the United States, our closest friend and ally? It just doesn't compute. But when you realize that it's not about foreign policy, it's about domestic policy. It's about millions of people we've let into Canada in the last 10 years who despise Israel and indeed Jews. Then it suddenly clicks. And then you realize, as Melanie Joly said when she was foreign minister, that it's about the demographics in her own district. So it's no surprise that Mark Carney endorsed the reward of recognizing Palestine as a country this fall at the UN. Here, take a listen.
For the reasons I cited earlier, Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026 in which Hamas can play no part, and to demilitarize the Palestinian state. Canada will increase its efforts in supporting strong democratic governance in Palestine and the contributions of its people to a more peaceful and hopeful future. I spoke today with President Abbas at length to reaffirm his commitment. Canada reiterates that Hamas must immediately release all hostages taken in the horrific terrorist attack of October 7th, that Hamas must disarm, and that Hamas must play no role in the future governance of Palestine. Canada will always steadfastly support Israel's existence as an independent state in the Middle East, living in peace and security. Any path to lasting peace for Israel also requires a viable and stable Palestinian state, and one that recognizes Israel's inalienable right to security and peace.
A lot of talk about Palestinian commitments. A commitment is a fancy way of saying a promise. So Mahmoud Abbas, who is now the president of the West Bank, the leader of the PLO, he has committed to bring in democratic reforms. He is now in the 20th year of his 4-year term. And of course, Hamas did actually win an election in Gaza, just once, mind you, because they never had an election again. Joining us now to talk about this is someone who actually went to Israel with me 20 years ago, right as Israel was extracting all remaining Jews from Gaza. There was a small number of farmers who lived in Gaza, typically greenhouses making fruit and vegetables. The Israeli government commanded them out, dug up their families' graves and reburied them in Israel proper. And we were there during that very momentous time. That was hoped that removing all the Jews from Gaza would allow that land to become a proto-state. Of course, it was just turned into a launch pad for terrorism. Joining us now is John Robson, historian, journalist, and a good egg. John, great to see you again.
It's good to be with you. And yes, that was a memorable trip, one of the highlights of my professional life, in fact. Can't believe it was 20 years ago, but there you are.
Well, tell me what you recall. We obviously did not go into Gaza itself, but I mean, the idea of Israeli military going in and physically dragging the last Jews out of Gaza so they could say, here, it's yours. No more Israeli soldiers, no more Israeli citizens. That is your Palestine. That was an enormous failure. It's almost as if Mark Carney doesn't know that was already tried.
Yes, if we wanted to make a list of all the things Mark Carney didn't know, we'd be here all night. But one of the things I remember vividly is that in Israel, because it's the only democracy in the Middle East, it's the only open society, there was a very lively debate about this pullout. And it was done by Ariel Sharon, who had a reputation as a right-winger, but the debate essentially went like this. Some people said, look, if we pull out of Gaza, they're going to turn it into a terror statelet, and we will have no end of nightmares, rockets on Ashdod and Ashkelon. And other people said, what else can we do? We can't make peace with these people. We can't negotiate with them. No promise they make us any good. We can't stay in there. It corrupts our own values. We need to pull out, give it to them, hope for the best, and build a wall. So people who think that Israel is acting recklessly or brutally or thoughtlessly, they have no idea the depth of debate and consideration that has gone on, and they don't seem to grasp that the fundamental reason this debate is so frustrating is there's no partner for peace on the other side. Yeah. That Hamas wants, as you said, right, it's not just about Israel, it's about Jews. It is about killing all the Jews. Kill all the Jews in Israel, kill all the Jews elsewhere. Allah will reward you. That's actually what they think, and it's what they say they think. And if our politicians would just take seriously the notion that people believe their beliefs, we would be in a much greater situation of clarity. But of course, one of the problems here, when you're showing what Mark Carney is saying, one of the problems is that Carney himself just lies all the time. So when he says that he believes that Mahmoud Abbas is going to hold elections that Hamas won't be in, it's very difficult to tell whether he actually believes that Abbas is going to do this, in which case he is, of course, an idiot, or whether he's just saying it because it gives him cover for doing something. And where are the journalists saying, okay, if they don't hold those elections, or if they hold them but Hamas is allowed to run, will you withdraw recognition? Nobody asks him the tough questions, and if they did, he'd probably walk away. He doesn't seem to enjoy being challenged. But when you're listening to his statement, the number of lies that he told, including Canada will always stand with Israel. We're not standing with Israel now. Yeah. You get these people saying, we need to impose an arms embargo, and not even knowing that we don't sell Israel weapons, which we certainly should if we had any. But with Carney, the whole performance, it's one thing to say a lot of what he said is stupid, a lot of what he said is wicked, but it's another thing to say, but there's no way of telling how much of it, if any of it, was sincere.
Right. He said things like Hamas must disarm and must not have any role. Okay, that's a statement of what should happen, but what happens if it doesn't happen? And Hamas has repeatedly refused to lay down arms. So it's almost like he's daydreaming or wishing. I say again, it makes no sense as foreign policy. It's only about domestic policy. But to be taken seriously, why? Just because Mark Carney in Canada, who no one thinks, what would Mark Carney do? No one who's trying to solve things in the Middle East says, what does Canada think? If we ever had such a position, I think 30 years ago, we had a conceit that we were honest brokers. I don't think anyone even regards Canada. Justin Trudeau burnt up so much money and political capital, and he couldn't get on the Security Council of the UN. No one takes Canada seriously as a diplomatic, military, or security force anymore. Hamas must do this. Abbas must do this. He's committed to it. It feels so childish, but here's what's interesting about it is it's the kind of thing Justin Trudeau probably would have said and done, but Justin Trudeau did not have Donald Trump. Trump came in just as Trudeau was going out, really. And Trump is redoing all his trade deals. And I don't understand all of it, frankly, but I see a lot of tough bargaining and countries saying they'll invest in America and they'll still pay tariffs to America. I don't understand it, to be honest, because I don't get the economics behind it. But almost immediately after Mark Carney made his statement, Donald Trump put a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, saying he was shocked by this. He clearly wasn't briefed in advance. and it's going to put a trade deal with Canada in jeopardy. And you might say, well, what has this got to do with trade? Well, nothing is the short answer, but the larger answer is, are you actually working against America's foreign policy plans? And if so, if Canada is trying to muck up Donald Trump's big plan for Gaza, why should Donald Trump concede the American market to Canadians? That's how Trump thinks. Someone else would say, well, you're doing it because economically it makes sense to trade with anyone. Free trade makes sense. But Donald Trump is more a fair trader than a free trader. What do you think of that, John?
It's certainly predictable that this announcement would have annoyed the United States. And since the job of the prime minister in foreign policy primarily is to safeguard our national interest, that was a good reason not to do it. Now, in fairness to Carney, in terms of negotiating with Donald Trump, it's a difficult thing to do because I'm not a big Trump fan. I think he doesn't understand the economics. And I also find that his position changes from moment to moment. Nevertheless, and I'm also just a unilateral free trader, what we need to do is lower our own tariffs, get rid of supply marketing, and so on. But since his job is to safeguard our national interests, and our far and away our most important relationship with is with the United States, even if it were in our national interest to side with the Jew haters on other grounds, we'd want to think 2 or 3 times about it because of this aspect. But of course, it's not. So the whole thing, it's just compounding the idiocy. And again, with Carney, because, as I said, and we just need to use words plainly, he lies a lot, right? Elbows up. He was going to go and, wallop Donald Trump, bam, bam, bam. And then he went down and groveled. Didn't work all that well. But when now you think he's going to stick his finger in Trump's eye over the Middle East, he may not recognize them, because you really can't believe anything he says. But what it does do is leave a bad taste in people's mouths. And as you said, we've had this strange notion that the world was just waiting to hear what we had to say. And in point of fact, I think for a long time, when they hear that Canada's on the phone, they go, I guess we better talk to him. But this is going to be 15 minutes I'll never get back. And again, and that thing about must, I have a peeve about this. A lot of people in Canada put out press releases, the government must do this or so-and-so must do that. And what they mean is, I wish they would do it, but they're not going to do it. They certainly are not in a position where they must do it. And here again, and in foreign policy particularly, you always have to remember the Buster Scruggs question. And if and I don't, because we say Hamas must disarm, and Hamas goes, no, actually, we're mad killers who live for death. So we're not doing that, whoever you are. And then, does it mean we won't recognize Palestine? Because if not, you see, that's the funny thing. When Carney says Hamas must disarm, it's a double lie. In the first place, Hamas doesn't need to do any such thing and aren't going to. But also, we are not then going to change our policy based on the fact that they didn't do something we said that they had to. So every word out of his mouth is deceit layered on deceit. It's extraordinary how Carney is the kind of guy who can say something meaningless and have it still be untrue. But this, where he said Hamas must disarm, that is a double falsehood. And he's up there, Hamas must disarm, blah, 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 blah. These people sound like trombones. But we shouldn't tolerate it, not from him, not from anybody. We should not allow politicians to tell a string of sententious lies and act as though something solid had been said. And as you know, and I get the fundraising calls, most media are in the pocket of the government these days, unlike the rebel. And so they know their bread is not buttered on the side where they ask Mark Carney tough questions. Yeah. But it's just essential. I mean, these are big issues. This showdown in the Middle East is one of the defining issues of our time. It will be a question, where were you when the Jews were fighting for their survival in their ancestral homeland? And if the answer is we were telling silly lies while undermining them in ineffectual ways, this is not what you want in your epitaph.
You and I are a certain vintage. We probably remember the furious diplomacy that happened under Bill Clinton when he worked with Yasser Arafat, then the leader of the PLO, to get various peace deals. There was a period of time when Yasser Arafat was the most frequent guest at the White House. Stop and think about that. More than the Canadian PM, more than the Mexican PM. Clinton put so much personal capital in it, and they basically promised the PLO everything. They carved out a little bit of they did a land swap. They said, we get like 97% of the West Bank, and the 3% that we're keeping for the Jews will make it up for you elsewhere. Like, he was given everything, the promise of so much cash. And basically, the problem was Israel and America kept saying yes. And he was hoping they would say no, because at the end of the day, he said, I can't sign this. Like, he negotiated. I think he got a Nobel Peace Prize out of it. And at the end, when he was given everything he asked for, he said, oh, I forgot to mention, I just can't, because I'll be killed the next day by my own people. And the reason I mentioned that from 30 years ago is because the Palestinians have already been offered everything. If they just disarm, stop teaching hate, stop attacking, and recognize Israel. And here's a question for you. So Canada is willing to recognize Palestine as a state. Will they ask Hamas and the PLO to recognize Israel as a state? Otherwise, their whole two states living together in peace thing is just a lie. I think there's no one in Mark Carney's office who remembers, who cares, that all of this was already offered to the PLO 25 years ago. As Henry Kissinger used to say, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. I don't think there's anything that shows they're more likely to do a deal now, but other countries in the region are, John. If you look at Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Sudan, these are all countries that signed the Abraham Accords. I think Saudi Arabia is extremely friendly to Israel these days, and as soon as the king passes away, the crown prince will join that peace treaty. I think that the Middle East is moving towards peace. If you look at the future for Syria and Lebanon with the terrorist group Hezbollah removed, I think there's a chance there. And I think actually that's why Trump is mad, because what Mark Carney has said is so stupid and gives such false hope to Hamas that it's actually a stumbling block for Trump's plans for Abraham Accords Round 2. What do you think of that?
Well, I think there are two big picture things that come to mind when you say these things. And one of them is the strange way in which Canadians think that we are safe, calm moderates, when in fact, we're normally left-wing maniacs who are 5 or 10 years out of date, including on issues like gender. And the other one is, if you looking back in history, if you look back past 1979, radicalism in the Middle East from the end of the Second World War until the Iranian Revolution was predominantly secular and socialist, sort of Ba'ath Party stuff. And then the Islamists came along, and they've had quite a long run, but they cannot deliver the goods. They can't build a good society. They can't kill all the Jews. All the things they promise their people don't happen. And so I think these countries that you're listing that are making peace with Israel, the fever is breaking to some degree. They're realizing that all of that was futile nonsense. And what a time for Canada to decide that it's exactly where we want to be. Because this enmity to Israel, that was a line from Mark Stein years ago, that societies that overinvest in anti-Semitism tend not to prosper. And objectively, if you were someone who lived in the Middle East, was from the Middle East, and wished that the Middle East was a happier, richer, more peaceful, and more honest place, you would say to yourself, at some point, this obsession with Israel and with Jews, let's be fair, it's about the Jews, has not served us well. There's something wrong with this ideology. So what a time for us to embrace it, particularly when we're going through a very rough patch with our American ally. And again, Donald Trump can be hard to manage, and I have actually quite a low opinion of Donald Trump. I think we differ on that one. But however it may be, he is the president, and our prime minister's got to deal with it. But even beyond that, I mean, you ask if people in Carney's office know this stuff, and probably some of them could look it up online. The difficulty is that they have this wildly inflated sense of their own importance and of their ability to change the world just by being them. And so, yeah, history schmistery. Now we have arrived, and we will say good and noble things, and everything will change. I mean, your question, well, will the Palestinian Authority, if we recognize it, recognize Israel? And the answer is no, of course not, because they have to kill all the Jews, or so Allah will like them. But Mark Carney thinks that he, by saying good things in his Mark Carney way, is going to make them see the world differently. This sounds absurd, but really an important part of the key to Canadian public policy, including on this one, is the incredible conceit of the people who are making it.
Yeah. I look at the United Kingdom so often because, what I like to say, it's my dystopian time machine. What happens there will happen here in 5 years because they're further down the road. So there's so many Muslim migrants that there are now 5 or 6 members of parliament who in the general election were not with the Conservative Party or the Labour Party or the Reform Party. They were sort of independents who ran on a Gaza platform. One of them is a white guy named Jeremy Corbyn, who used to lead the Labour Party. But the rest are typically Pakistani Muslims who beat the Labour Party. They had a phrase, lend Gaza your vote. And so they were in ridings that were 30, 40% Muslim to begin with. And, you know, some people voted Labour, some voted Conservative. But the ethnic cohesion in those districts was big enough that they threw out their pro-Muslim white MPs and just went with the real thing. Muslim MPs running on a Muslim agenda. And now it looks like they might actually form a party. My point is, that's what's going on. There isn't actually any foreign policy thinking and foreign policy strategy. In places like Mississauga, I predict that within an election or two, you will have candidates who say, I don't need a white mayor like who's it, Bonnie Crombie or whoever. I think that she may be the last white mayor of Mississauga. Because once the useful idiots of the mainstream parties are done, there may be regions where Islamist candidates the mask can drop and say, I'm here for Gaza. I don't care about local things. I'm living in the ruins of a once great civilization called the UK, and I'm running as a colonizer, really. And I hear that language. I mean, I talked to an Algerian man in Marseille who said France colonized Algeria for 130 years. We're here now to return the favor. He said this, and I don't think he was, making a joke. He was deadly serious. I think this is all about mass immigration. I think that it's at a tipping point, and I think that if we don't have mass remigration quickly, I think we're going to wind up like the UK. Last point to you. What do you think?
Well, I'm speaking as a historian. The most important lesson of history is that ideas matter. And if you intentionally bring large numbers of people into your country who believe that Western civilization is evil for all sorts of reasons, including that we are infidels, then when they get here, they are going to try to turn Canada into an Islamist nation. It would be crazy for them to do anything else. This is what they believe. So we need to take their ideas seriously, but we can't do that until we start taking our own ideas seriously again, until we start believing in the things that made the West great, the Judeo-Christian heritage, Magna Carta, liberty under law. Because at the moment, it's a battle in which, the best lack all conviction and the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And that includes people like Mark Carney, who are signed on to this mass immigration agenda. And I'm all for immigrants if they're coming here because they want to be Canadian. But if they're coming here because they want Canada to be their homeland, they should stay in their homeland because it's a terrible place. And if you like it there, stay there, but don't make our country into it. But it's not them, it's us. Why are we so eager to do this? Why do we ramp up immigration to this enormously high levels, knowing that we're bringing in people who do not like Western civilization, who do not believe in women's rights, who do not believe in gay rights, who do not believe in free enterprise, who think dogs are haram, all this kind of stuff? Why on earth would you bring all these people in? That's the question that people like Mark Carney ought to be asked if journalists had any gumption and were willing to hold their feet to the fire on ideas. But until we do that, we're going to lose the battle of ideas to bad ideas because we don't seem to have any.
Yeah. Well, it's dangerous days. That's why I'm riveted by these organic protests that are popping up in the UK. I've been following sort of the professional activists like the Tommy Robinsons for a decade, but this is now a new age. In the United Kingdom today, there were probably half a dozen grassroots protests. I would call them leaderless protests, some of them up to 1,000 people. Something's happening in the UK. The response by the government, of course, is censorship. What's happening in the UK today may happen here. I just hope that we wake up in time to make a difference. John Robson, great to see you again. Tell us, before we go, what's the best way to follow you, either online or new projects you're up to? How should people track John Robson if they want more?
They should go to my website, that's johnrobson.ca, and they should go to the Climate Discussion Nexus, climatediscussionnexus.com. Those are the two best ways to stay in touch with me.
There it is, Dr. John Robson. Great to see you. Thanks for your time and your smarts.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Stay with us. More ahead.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in North Toronto. And folks, I'm at Catch the Fire Church, and this is the venue for a Sunday evening concert by Sean Feucht. You may have heard of Sean Feucht. What has happened to this Christian rock musician has been nothing short of disgraceful. What we had in the last week are 6 venues cancel his appearances. Why? Well, because he's MAGA. Oh, is that right? Is that illegal to want to make America great again? Well, apparently in our Dominion, under Mark Carney, it is. He's also anti-LGBT, etc., etc. What does that mean? Well, that means he doesn't believe that a trans woman is a real woman. He's also allegedly anti-woman. Why? Because he is pro-life. Yeah, for these reasons, they have deemed this person persona non grata in our country. And we have seen such a motley crew of agitators team up. We've got government. We have the Rainbow Mafia. We have the legacy media. And we even have the Hamas holes. And no, I don't exaggerate, folks. Check out what happened on Friday when Sean went to a church in Montreal to perform. This is unbelievable.
And if God can fill me with joy, if God can fill our team, our band with joy after Antifa threw smoke bombs at us during worship, after we were run off the road on the highway, if we can be carrying joy, then tonight, joy can come on you too.
So there you have it, folks. Can you imagine the outcry if someone went to a mosque and set off a smoke bomb? And by the way, that smoke bomb, I understand, has done some major damage. That church had put in a new air conditioning unit. Evidently, the smoke has, it's fried the system somehow. But no, if that had been at a different place of worship, if that had been at a mosque, I would argue that right now there would already be a royal commission struck regarding Islamophobia in Canada. And yet, the mainstream media in Montreal, what were they concerned about? Well, check out this airhead with Radio Canada. That's the state-funded French version of CBC. You're not going to believe this question.
That is because you don't have the permit to have the concert.
I don't think you need a permit to worship in a church. Last time I checked, you don't need a permit to worship.
Religious freedom, Radio Canada. It's religious freedom. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Religious freedom. You don't need a permit to worship Radio Canada.
Well, you have to research your laws on that.
My
But
God, it's incredible.
worshiping in a church, I don't believe you need a permit for that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you have a permit? Well, since when do you need a permit to go to a church and worship or perform? And by the way, again, when it comes to two-tier politics, two-tier law enforcement, the double standard, for a year and a half, more actually, we have seen the Islamists take over busy intersections in major cities to do their prayers. And what happens? Well, they get away with it. Yes, you have a constitutional right to pray in Canada. No, you do not have a constitutional right to block traffic. And speaking of the Constitution, I would imagine this has been a wake-up call for Sean, being from the U.S., being used to the precious First Amendment. Well, we have nothing like the First Amendment in Canada, do we, folks? In any event, that is why we are here. In about a half hour, the show will go on. And we want to see if Antifa and the Hamas holes and the Rainbow Mafia types, if they'll come up here to disrupt the performance. I'm guessing no. You see, where we're located, it's in Northwest Toronto. The subway doesn't go this far, and most of those losers don't have cars. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But in the meantime, we'll talk to the people that want to actually see the show and enjoy the show. And hopefully we'll get to speak to Sean himself to take inventory of this crazy week in the Dominion of Canada. But folks, before I get into the nitty-gritty of the report, can you help us out? As you can see, our beautiful Jumbotron truck is here. It's in solidarity with Sean, and it's sending the message that religious persecution of Christians will not be tolerated. Please go to letusworship.ca. That's letusworship.ca. Sign the petition, and if you're able to, can you help us out with the cost of our truck? Can you kick in $1 or $2? I much appreciate that.
Just to catch you guys up, the Lord gave us a mandate, Isaiah 61. We did all 50 U.S. capitals. We brought worship, communion, prayer, revival. All across America and many places around the world. I just thought it was significant. Even this year, I've brought worship to the Middle East. I've been with the Iraqi Kurdish president. We've worshiped in palaces. We've worshiped in Turkey with the refugees. We've worshiped in Israel. We've worshiped all over the world in Africa. I've been with Heidi in Mozambique worshiping. And the place where I got the biggest resistance and persecution was Canada. It's wild. Not Iraq or Turkey, but Canada. But you know what that tells me? The enemy only messes with nations that he's scared of.
Hi, ma'am. I see a sign. It says, "Let us worship." Absolutely. You know, I always thought worship was an enshrined right under our Constitution, but Sean Feucht found out the hard way that's not necessarily the case anymore.
That's right. He found out. But you know what? It would take a wonderful, strong American warrior to find that out, wouldn't you think?
Like, all he's doing is trying to preach the word of God and bring people onto the cause. You know what I mean? He seems like a solid human being, and he's just trying to better Canadians' lives by bringing the word of God to them.
It's a very spiritual warfare that's happening. Yeah. You know, you can clearly see that this is, it's such a spiritual warfare that's going on. And Sean is used to it. Obviously, he's been going through this a lot throughout, when he first started in COVID. But I think the church should really realize that we are in a spiritual warfare. This is real. And we need to be bold and courageous, as the Bible asks us to be. So
I'm reading your shirt, "Let us worship." What are you trying to say by that?
I need to give you a hug.
Oh, well, holy cow, my lucky day.
Yeah. Right.
It's a national travesty. I mean, this country was based on the founding fathers and their faith. Yeah. And look at where we've evolved to. It's amazing how far we've fallen in the freedom to express our faith.
I see you're wearing a shirt that says "Jesus loves you." I think in Canada these days, in certain circles, that might be hate speech.
And yeah, I think because of the, for a lot of reasons, theologically reasons that people might differ theologically on different interpretations of Scripture. Yeah. And so the focus is more on that divisiveness than the love that Jesus portrayed and commanded us. Right? He said, "Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, with all that you are, and love others as you would love yourself."
The government, again, wants to, show that they have power over our ability to worship and ability to do anything, really.
I guess some people don't want to hear the word of God.
Right.
And the hatred towards Christianity might be part of it. But by hearing his preach and word of God to him, maybe some of those people will change their mind towards Christians.
First of all, I didn't even know who he was at the beginning.
Yes.
And so we have to thank CBC for bringing him into the light, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Certain religions seem to be less free in Canada. I mean, it seems downright fashionable to hate Christianity.
Yeah, so freedom of Christianity. That's why I'm really here.
What do you make of the welcome Sean Feucht received this past week? His shows being canceled, him being vilified?
Oh, it's disgraceful.
Yes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, just because they don't like the president of the United States or whatever other reasons that he talks, other things he talks about, other views. If you don't hold that view, that's okay. We don't hold the views maybe that you have. But we should be free to express our own views.
You don't have to agree with Mr. Feucht.
Yes.
I don't even know, I don't know him that well. I don't even know what all his political, theological views are. That's besides the point. Freedom of expression and assembly are the foundational pillars of our country.
Our freedom is at stake here in Canada, and that we're under threat of communism for what it is. We see segments of that across our nation, and our freedom to worship is at stake. Freedom of speech is at stake. A lot is at stake for the Canadian citizens, so this is a big deal for us as citizens and also those that want to worship freely across this nation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the people that were throwing smoke bombs, nothing ever happened to them. There wasn't much police force in that way, right? So it seems like unfair that as Christians we're being persecuted to just host a worship service where there's no violence, there's nothing wrong going on. We're literally worshiping God, and yet everyone is attacking us, but nothing's happening on their side. So
God's going to use this. God's going to use this, and it ain't stopping here. We're going to Winnipeg. If they let me back in. Saskatoon, Edmonton, Kelowna, Abbotsford. And every single day, we're going to see God move.
I'm the kind of person, if you don't want to go see something, just stay home.
100%. It's all about freedom. I'm such a huge advocate of freedom. And I feel like we used to pride ourselves here in Canada on freedom. And I feel like ever since, I don't know, around 2020, when there was a pandemic, I feel like that's when our rights started to be taken away. And the way we were treated by the government starting then, I feel like so many of our rights were taken away. And we started to really see, if you're Christian and if you're unvaccinated, it's just a huge double whammy hitter on your forehead. So I feel like right now, it's just kind of like they want to keep that momentum going.
It seems unfair and unjust. Like, he really hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't called for violence or anything. You know what I mean? That would be the main reason why anybody would denounce this guy or try to cancel him. But I feel like he's got nothing but a good message for everybody.
I see you have a shirt, Let Us Worship. You have the Christian cross there and the maple leaf. What message are you trying to send tonight?
Jesus is alive. No, Jesus is alive, and Sean is his spokesperson.
Okay.
And we're here to support.
Now, if you mention God or Jesus, you're ostracized, and not only in schools, but almost everywhere you go.
Well, I don't even think that's conjecture. I mean, a few years ago, we saw dozens and dozens of churches vandalized and even burnt to the ground. And
absolutely,
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's best pal, Gerald Butt, says he understands this.
And Trudeau said, I can understand why they're burning churches. He said that.
One of my reflections is I understand the anger that's out there against the federal government, against institutions like the Catholic Church. It is real, and it is fully understandable given the shameful history that we're all becoming more and more aware of and engaging ourselves to do better as Canadians.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Hey, we all want the best thing for society. At least that's what we hope.
Somebody who is invited into a church to do a performance, some would say, oh, you need a permit for that. And yet we've seen the Islamists in Canada at major intersections shutting down traffic, which is illegal. And we are told by the city, we are told by the police service, oh, it's their constitutional right to pray. Why the double standard?
I think they're just being allowed into the country as a show of power and an attack on Christianity, an attack on Jews.
It's part of the hatred towards Christians.
only thing I'm worried about is that I know that he has to leave Canada and do some touring in the States, and then he's coming back.
Okay.
And I'm worried about that part.
Well, I can't wait. Although
Let's see what
I don't know why he'd want to come back to Canada after the welcome we gave him.
Yeah, but Alberta will give him a wonderful welcome.
Well, that's true too.
I just saw about it. I heard about it, and I called up a friend, and I said, "Let's go and support him." So here we are.
Hi,
Yeah.
Hey, ladies.
Good to see you.
It's so much more than they're trying to make it about Sean. You know, it's this or it's that.
Yeah.
No, this is an anti-Christian alliance that I would say is, an axis of evil,
Yes.
to borrow the old expression, that they align. And you see the systematic. So they put out a hit piece, then the bureaucrats cancel the venues, right? And then all of the alphabet soup of agencies and groups come out and just dogpile on them because they want to cancel them, right? And that's what we see. It's a very systematic, planned way. It's supposed to look kind of random, it's just citizens rising up. This is not what this is. This is not citizens rising up. This is an axis of evil trying to shut down an entire sector of the population.
Every Canadian citizen wants the equal freedom to worship whatever their faith is. If you're Muslim, Christian, or Sikh, or whatever, right? We all want that freedom, but I mean, what we're seeing here is we see a clash of two kingdoms at stake here, of darkness and light. And I mean, we're pushing forward for, me as a Christian, we're pushing for the light to prevail in this nation.
Well, I guess to paraphrase George Orwell from Animal Farm, all religions are equal, but some are more equal than others, it would seem.
Yep. George Orwell, yeah. He's he wrote 1984. That's a significant, reality that we're seeing here in society. So we want to challenge that. So
worth rereading these days.
We brought our bus, we brought our truck, we brought our team, we bought plane tickets, we brought the gas, went through all the tariffs and all the stuff, paid all the fees, did all the stuff. We actually did it all legitimate. The sad thing is all of these municipalities and cities kept our money. Tens of thousands of dollars they kept. Didn't even refund it. And so it's just been a struggle to pay for everything, and we changed our plans. And I thank God for this amazing church tonight that let us come. Thank you, my friend.
And man, that's the crux of the matter. Why Christianity is being singled out as the faith where it's almost fashionable in certain circles to hate.
I know. Honestly, I feel like we come by it easily. Jesus said it'll be hard. He said they hated me and they'll persecute you also. So I feel like we are going to see persecution. And I feel like our brothers in other countries and sisters have it way worse. We're only experiencing a small ripple in the pond of persecution.
Okay.
But I feel like it is unfair against us because being that, Muslim or different faiths can absolutely shut down whole streets. In Toronto and wherever else, they don't need a permit. They can shut down government buildings and tear down, historic statues. They don't need a permit to do that. So I feel like all we're trying to do, like our brother Sean, just trying to sing and worship our God in a church in Montreal, should not need a team of police to come and take him down. I feel like I love the police. I support them, and I love our police, firefighter, and all of those type of people in our society. But I feel like, is there not someone else you could track upon of a, say, child trafficking circle? Maybe.
Or how about, and in terms of comparing apples with apples here, how about the guy who set off a smoke bomb in the Montreal church?
You know what? I'm glad you said that because that's a huge thing that nobody's talking about right now. How come they didn't want to check that out and protect, right? Serve and protect.
Yeah.
So instead they wanted to serve and protect who? Out of us, Christians worshiping? Is that such a threat?
Yeah, it's kind of perverse, isn't it, that in our country we're all about diversity as our strength, but when it comes to a diversity of opinions, not so much.
Exactly. It's unfortunate. And that's the new Canada until we get a conservative government. Unfortunately, that's what it is right now.
I thought if you didn't like something or didn't like a performer, you simply don't go. You don't take away his platform.
That's exactly right. And Sean's got big shoulders, and God is bigger than anything that anybody can throw at us. So again, he's our warrior. We're here to support him.
Okay. I believe that it's an anti-family, anti-structural values in our society. I believe that Christian values fundamentally are values that anybody can get behind.
Yes.
Pro-family, pro-economic freedom, pro-free market, where we just live in peace and harmony and we fight crime and we fight evil in the world. Those are fundamental Christian values that are shared by many other people. Yes. And that is it's absolutely antithetical to the people that are opposing this. They want chaos. They are authors and fomenters of chaos, and they want anarchy. And the ones that claim to be the most anti-fascist are actually fascists.
Now is the time for the church to be bold, you know, and obviously we're bold in love, right? We're called to love our enemies. We're called to pray for those who persecute us. And that's kind of what we're passionate about too. So we need to pray for these people. I know it's tough to do sometimes when you're being persecuted, to show love and pray for them. But that's honestly what I feel like is our best response, you know, but at the same time, not, you know, allowing things to happen, right? Like, you know, taking a stand and speaking out, but also us for praying for these people, because at the end of the day, they're human beings too, and they need to know Jesus. So that's my perspective. And yeah.
Well, folks, I think this scene paints a somewhat dire picture that we have to have a police presence in order for a church service to go on unmolested. You see, there were all kinds of rumors that Antifa and the Hamas holes, they were going to come here, they were going to shut this down. But I really never believed it, folks, because you see, we're a little too far north of the subway line, and that's a bridge too far for those losers. But even so, I guess the silver lining is that at least the police are here to ensure the show goes on. We saw what happened in Montreal. We saw Mayor Plante send in the Gestapo to the church to harass them and threaten them with fines for not having a permit. Thank God that is not happening here tonight. Well, folks, knocking me down with a feather. You never know who you're going to see at church on a Sunday evening. It looks like Elmo. Elmo, I'm reading your sign. It says, Elmo says a government that underperforms should not engage in overreach. Elmo, what do you mean by that? Oh, I guess that's that rule of mascots. They're not allowed to talk. There's another sign. Elmo says, if you find me offensive, then quit finding me. You know what? I think that is the crux of the matter. If anyone finds Sean Feucht offensive, then simply don't go to the show. Why do we have to cancel a show? Nod like that for yes. All right. Okay. Thank you, Elmo.
Now we know that our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's not against the media. It's not against politicians. Our battle is against powers and principalities. This is why they don't want worship. Because it reminds the powers and principalities that this land belongs to Jesus.
You know what? It really reminds me of when I was at the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa and I saw beautiful, peaceful folk standing there with no violence, and the brutality that I saw and then later saw on the news of people being beat up when they're peacefully standing there in which we're supposed to be able to protest.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I don't want to...
And meanwhile, gangbangers accused of attempted murder out on bail.
You said it. Yes, thank you.
What do you make, by the way, since you brought up the Freedom Convoy, the Crown wanting Chris Barber to do 8 years and Tamara Leach to do 7?
Do not get me started. I've been telling my husband, this is absurd.
Yes.
Why are we making a spectacle of them and doing this?
Yes.
Tamara has, I'm not sure Chris Barber's like past history, but Tamara absolutely has no violence, no, track record. Why is she on house arrest for how many years now? 3.5? What did Chris Barber do? They're actually my Canadian heroes. Love you guys if you see this.
A lot of Christians are scared to get into politics. They're scared to share anything on their Facebook that could involve politics or be controversial. And I think now is the time where we have to actually be okay to share things that are about politics and not be afraid, because the church really needs to stand together. And if everyone here, the amount of people here, if we stood together, I think that we could have some serious change in the government and the policies. So it really is just about the church standing up.
We're here for one reason. Standing up for what Canada was founded on. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion. That is the hill we all must die on.
And And something happened in that moment. It's like Billy Graham said, that when a courageous man takes a stand, the spines of everyone else are stiffened. I want to speak to the spine of the Canadian church. And I want you to sing with me. Come on, sing this out. And I'm never gonna stop praising.
And I have to tell you, Sean, if you believe the CBC, I was supposed to be observing a hate fest today, and I saw singing and dancing and laughing and praying. Here's the question. You came into Canada and you had various forces, government, the mainstream media, some in the radicalized LGBT community, and even Islamists attacking you, vilifying you, demonizing you, canceling you. What's going on?
Well, I think that, as a believer, as a follower of God, I believe that like we're in a spiritual war. Mm-hmm. So, it says in the Bible that our battle's not against flesh and blood. I don't believe it's against people, but I believe that there are principalities and powers and dark forces controlling people. And so I think that anytime that you step in carrying the light or carrying a different kind of atmosphere, some people may call it energy, I just call it the kingdom of God. I think that anything representing darkness doesn't like it, And that's what we've experienced across the country. That's the media, that's the protesters, the agitators. You saw tonight, the world saw tonight, thousands were live streaming. Thousands were here.
It was a beautiful presentation. But Sean, we had the opposite of that in Montreal on Friday. Take us back there. We saw vandals coming in, lighting smoke bombs. Mm-hmm. We saw the police barging in, apparently at the behest of Mayor Plante, and not laying charges against these vandals, at least so far. Take us back to Montreal on Friday. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think that, had I not gone through 2020 and Portland and Seattle and LA and Chicago, and I could go on and on and on with the list of cities. I've dealt with that same thing before. I think what shocked me is I was like, whoa, this is in Canada.
Yes.
I've been coming here for 20 years and doing music and worship and praying. Everything you saw tonight, I've done this for 20 years across Canada. And I know a lot of people don't know that. This isn't my first time here.
Yes.
And so, but this is my first time experiencing the state of the nation right now that allows and even at times encourages an anti-Christian bias behavior.
And for you in specifically, we have you being labeled as MAGA. Well, last time I looked, there was a guy in the White House that was very much into MAGA. You're being labeled anti-woman. That's some people's way of describing someone who's pro-life. Because you don't accept, say, a trans woman as being a real woman, that makes you anti-LGBT, according to some. But I would suggest that most people, millions and millions of Canadians, subscribe to your viewpoints. Do you think this is, I guess, tyranny by the minority, those in power, those who are the media elite, trying to create the narrative?
Well, the tail always wags the dog, and I think you have a minority. I think that's the sad part here is you're cowering and bowing to a very small mob. And and if these politicians and these leaders had any spine, they would stand up for what's right. Not only biblically. Now, I'm a Bible person, so they can call me whatever name they want. I don't really care. Like, to me, I follow the Word of God. I follow the Bible. That's my lifeline and roadmap for life. Now, but on the governmental side or whatever, there's two things existing here. One, I'm a Christian, I follow the Bible, but also I'm in a country that supposedly is supposed to protect people with my beliefs. And I think the sad reality is that didn't happen on this trip. And I'm praying that our experience will provoke a national dialogue where we can kind of look and see, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Why was this allowed to happen or encouraged? And how can we change things moving forward?
And Sean, it was ever thus that if you didn't like a performer, if you didn't like a person,
just don't show up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now the cancel culture mob wants to eradicate you.
into a private church.
Exactly.
That's where we're at right now. And I think that most Canadians, I think sometimes you're so used to this. And I just want to tell you, I've been to the Middle East this year. I've been to countries in war zones. I've never had somebody bust into a church to attack peaceful Christians worshiping. That doesn't happen, especially in the West. It shouldn't happen.
It's despicable. And you have a Radio Canada reporter asking you, did you have a permit to go to the church?
That is because you don't have the permit to have the concert.
I don't think you need a permit to worship in a church. Yeah, that was funny. I mean, that moment kind of went viral and went out there as it should, because it's kind of ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And I think it's ridiculous, Sean, because in Montreal for several weeks, we have had Islamists praying in front of the basilica there, blocking a street, getting police protection. Tell me, why does it seem that there's a double standard and a two-tier policing, two-tier politicking when it comes to Christianity versus, in this case, Islam?
Well, Christians are the most persecuted people group in the world. That's a fact. It's not debatable. Anybody that's watching this can research that. That's historically true. And sadly, it's still true today. And so I think that Christian, straight, white, you believe the Bible, like everybody else can do anything. But if you're in that group, whoa, watch out, And that's sad, because that shows real racism, and real bias and real, you could call it Christophobia, towards people of faith. And so my prayer is that, and this is what we're praying tonight, that people would rise up with boldness against this. That's evil.
Yes.
That's evil. That's demonic. That should not be allowed in Canada. It shouldn't be encouraged. It should not be something that's accepted. It should not be something that's promoted. It shouldn't be something that's encouraged. And so hopefully people's eyes are open now. And as we continue this tour, from Winnipeg all the way out to British Columbia, that it'll be a little better.
Well, Christophobia should be denounced, as it should be any hatred against any faith. But it's not. In some circles, Sean, it's fashionable. A few years ago, when we had dozens and dozens of Canadian churches vandalized and burned to the ground, Justin Trudeau's best friend, Gerald Butts, came out on record. He tweeted that, I understand this. Imagine if you were to say that about any other place of worship.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the politicians are all out of tricks. People are seeing it for what it's worth. Even on this, trip, I think that, that the media's only damaged their own credibility even further.
Indeed. So. And Sean, I mean, I'd love to sit down with you for an hour, but I know you literally have a plane to catch. One last question. It's actually an observation. I think you need to reach out to all these people who vilified you and demonized you and canceled you and thank them. I think there are thousands of people that didn't know the name Sean Feucht just 5 days ago, and suddenly look at your followers, look at the people buying your book, look at the people donating. Is this the Barbara Streisand effect? Have they done you indirectly the biggest favor imaginable in terms of creating a platform for Sean Feucht?
Well, we call that, what the enemy meant for evil, God turns for good. I think that it was their goal to have us to quit the tour after the venue was canceled. It was their goal to have us be quiet. It was their goal in, Montreal a few days ago for us to stop the service. Yeah. But we don't quit. Yes. And we haven't. And I think that's my one message to believers and to Canadians out there. Don't quit. Don't quit. If you don't quit, you win. If you keep pressing on, you'll outlast them. And I think that's what we're doing here. And I pray that encourages a lot of people.
Sean, your concert tonight was, I can think of no other word but beautiful. The people were beautiful. The love and the joy in the room, completely contrary to the smear job you endured. Yeah. Sean, I want to thank you for your time. And I hope next time you come back to Canada, you don't have to endure such egregious cancel culture.
Me too. Looking forward to that.
Well, there you have it, folks. If you believe the CBC and other legacy media outlets, this was supposed to be a hate fest here tonight. Well, talk about not coming billed as advertised. What did we see? We saw people laughing and singing and dancing and praying. The love was in the room. It was off the charts.
You know, and a lot of Canadians are, Sean, I don't really want to be controversial, and do you want to follow Jesus? It's 2025, man. Following Jesus is controversial. Buckle up, Buttercup. Get used to being hated. Get used to being slandered. Get used to being censored. Get used to being canceled. And do it for Jesus with joy. And I find that too many Canadians and too many pastors and too many leaders, they don't want conflict. And I'm going to tell you today, it's inevitable. If it happened in the Bible, it's going to happen to you. And you know what? You can worship right through it, baby. Smoke bombs going off, police everywhere, chaos, and we just kept worshiping.
And as I mentioned to Sean in my interview, I think all these nefarious forces did him the best favor imaginable in terms of giving him publicity. They have raised his platform. It reminds me of an old proverb. It's not a biblical proverb, but it's a proverb nevertheless. He who laughs last laughs loudest. In other words, thank you, CBC and others. Thank you, government agencies and politicians, for creating a Barbara Streisand effect in the positive for Sean Feucht. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies.